gummy bear.
It's the internet. You're busy. Let's do this for January 11th, 2024. For the next hour or so, let me help you sort through the world of gaming on Game Mess Mornings Live with me, Jeff Grubb. Today, PlayStation 5 is maybe getting a new controller, and we might know the name of the next Indiana Jones gaming adventure. But first, please join me in welcoming today's co-host of Game Mess Mornings. It's Jan Ochoa, everybody. Jan, how are you doing?
I'm feeling at a solid 71%.
Ooh,
That's right, folks.
We went back down. We're sliding. Oh, no.
I went back down. I woke up this morning, and I just felt dead.
Oh, the ups and downs. Oh, no.
The ups and downs. But, you know, maybe it's because I'm trying to push a little bit harder than you should.
Yeah.
When you're recovering from an illness. So, folks, take care of yourselves. You know, give yourself a little bit of grace. My favorite joke now, Grubb, is when I'm with the family and we're about to eat dinner. Someone says, "Oh, we should say grace." I will loudly proclaim, "Grace."
That's pretty good stuff, Jan.
None of my family thinks it's a fun joke.
The dad jokes they're right there. You're going to be like the expert dad joke here. Whoa, my whole computer just flashed on me. That's always fun. You always like that when you're first starting a show. The computer's like, I'm not really feeling it today. Maybe I'll work. Maybe I won't. I went for a walk this morning. It was like the first time since the beginning of the year where I was like, okay, I dropped my kids off and it was snowy instead of rainy. So I'm like, okay, It won't be like a muddy walk. It was still a little bit muddy, of course, but I was out in the woods and I did decide to skip. I was like, I think I could still skip. Now, Jan, if you were alone walking in the woods and you saw a 6 foot, 250-pound white man with a beard skipping at you, how would you feel about that?
I think he'd be training for something. So I just wouldn't question it. He's like, this man is preparing for something. So maybe I'll incorporate skipping into my own daily routine.
My assumption is, and this is how I felt as soon as I did, I'm like, oh my God, if someone sees this, they're just going to assume that, because I'll be far away. They won't be able to see my face. Like, that's a clown coming to kill me. Like, that is just what I assume most people would feel about that. I feel like I shouldn't skip just for the safety of other people.
Grubb, don't worry about other people when it comes to you and your skipping. All right,
it's right. It is fun.
You're incorporating like a full range of motion, right? You're probably getting the heartbeat up pretty. The Scout is a proponent of skipping. You can't skip. You're a dog. You're getting the heart rate up, which is always important in the morning. Screw the hose.
All right, the haters in the hose.
Skip on those hose.
I'll skip on those hose. Hell yeah. It was fun though. It's like, man, I could skip really fast. I can get places doing this thing. This is the way to travel. Skipping should be in more video games as well. All right, let's explain what we do here. Most weekdays, I, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe even some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you are watching live on Twitch, welcome. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings or find the RSS on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later with chapters and timestamps on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. All right, we have a lot to get into, so let's start the morning mess with PS5 V2 DualSense controller listing with improved battery life appears online. This comes from Darren Bonthus at GameSpot. With its wide selection of haptic feedback features, the PlayStation DualSense controller is one of the most advanced pieces of gaming gear on the market, as well as one of the most thirstiest when it comes to battery life. Hell yeah. A new listing for a V2 version of the DualSense might address this problem, as it looks like the peripheral will be getting an upgraded battery. Beyond the updated internals, the overall design and aesthetics of the controller remain unchanged. According to product listings on Best Buy's Canadian and UK websites, this new version of the DualSense will offer an exceptional 12-hour battery life, a noticeable improvement on the current controller, which, 6 or 7 from that original DualSense controller, which I hate. I really do hate it, Jan. I hate how often I pick up that controller and it's dead. I know my more responsible friends will yell at me and be like, just plug it in when you're done. And I'm like, you don't live the life I lead. You don't get it. You just don't get me.
No, see, those people would also judge you for skipping in the forest. I'm with
exactly.
You,
Thank you, Jan.
I will as soon as you're done with the controller, you'll just place it down wherever you're at. It's not part of like
Toss
the
it.
built-in routine of having to plug it in. It's just like, phones, you should plug it in, but oftentimes you just leave it askew when you go to bed, right? Like
Right, yeah.
who's charging their
Yeah.
phone all the time?
Right. Yeah. I don't charge my phone every night. Sometimes I do forget. And that is, again, the life I lead. I'll say, like, I'm at my desk now and I have one of those 8-bit does that has the dock. That's like right there in front of me when I'm done. So putting that back on the dock when I'm done is great. But even if I had like a DualSense dock, if it was over like by the TV or in the entertainment stand, I probably wouldn't put it like back every single time. And you miss one charging session with that thing. The next time you pick it up, it's going to last like a half an hour, and then then it's dead, and it's so frustrating. So I keep one of my DualSenses just plugged in all the time now with an extra long USB-C cable. I would like not to do that. Most of my other controllers are completely wireless. 12 hours of battery life, not like some astounding figure, but twice as good maybe, or in that range. Give it to me. That sounds fantastic. And if that's the only improvement, Jan, I'll be getting it. I'll be buying a V2 of the DualSense. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I get it. It stinks that better battery life is enough to get all of us to jump ship and buy another DualSense controller. I'd like some type of improvement on the controller itself. I'm not exactly sure what specifically I'm looking for. I know the TAM has had a lot of problems using a DualSense controller, so the overall ergonomics for some people, maybe with bigger hands, has just not been it. I know that I've experienced some hand pain with it. But I'm not as serious of a gamer as Tam.
Yeah, none of us are.
Is the issue.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. Maybe just make it like Sony, make it like 5% bigger. You're putting a bigger battery. Just make it a teensy bit bigger.
For me, it's the hard edge on the bottom. Sometimes I'll rest my finger on it, and that's how I injured myself playing Astro and doing speedruns on there. It really was like it was like the most my finger had ever hurt from not being broken or sprained or something. It was just this sharp piece of plastic resting on my finger to the point where it was like irritated. It must have got infected or something. It was wild. And overall, I'm mostly fine with the ergonomics. Beyond that, that was an extreme outlier of playing one game way too much, and most people are never going to encounter that. But I'm like, I can see how some people people are asking about Tam. Tam's hands, like he says, he gets like mad tingles and like pain from like hour-long sessions, like 1 hour-long sessions playing games on the DualSense. So he's looking for other. I mean, maybe it was the DualSense. Was the more expensive one? I can't remember. It was like the special version. I think he was saying that was one specifically that was giving him problems.
I wonder if he was putting in hours on the PlayStation Portal as well, if like that, because that's pretty much just a DualSense split in half with a big screen in the middle.
Right. Yes.
I wonder if that also added to it as well.
Probably. But yeah, I mean, I love a V2 controller. I love an upgraded like the Xbox One version 2 controller. Like that one was like they did a better job on the weight distribution. They added that the share button essentially, I think, right? That's what they did. And that was like, this is a good update. And that's like the primary one I would use for a very long time. And then they kind of just refined that to a version 3 with the Xbox Series X and S, and now that's a great controller. I hope that they make slight, subtle changes that we're not noticing yet until we get our hands on it. I'm right there with you, and I think that's a possibility. Like these companies will the weight distribution probably just automatically gets changed when they are changing the internals, and so maybe that gives the engineers a chance to think about that again. And I hope they had their ergonomics team on that and making sure it's even more comfortable to use.
You know, it's an actually surprisingly very comfortable PlayStation controller is the PSVR 2 controllers. Those bad boys actually fit really nicely in your hand. And I don't know, I'm sure they can apply that same technology and molding to just slap them together. I had to switch back from my third-party Joy-Cons to the standard Joy-Cons, and I didn't realize how small those original Joy-Cons are and how much they feel like little baby controllers. And it just does not work. Yeah,
I got one of the ones that are just like actual controllers broken in half that you attach to the side. But I've used the grip a bunch of times, and a grip can make a huge difference. It can really help those Joy-Cons feel like they make sense.
Grip it and rip it. We're always saying that.
That's right. This is probably going to launch with the maybe the Pro. I guess this is probably coming out earlier than that, right? If we're already seeing listings, and we got like the Slim is out, right? Everybody, I can't remember if I've even seen the Slim.
The Slim is out.
Slim came out late last year, and this did not launch with that. So that's weird, I guess. If you were going to have a V2, why not just launch it with that Slim? But maybe it wasn't ready. And I would imagine, though, if this is going to be ready, it will launch with the Pro later this year. It'll just be bundled in with that system. And then you could buy it separately, probably starting here in a couple of months, maybe not even that long. Hey, we got like that state of play that I mentioned before. That's probably coming in the next couple of weeks. Wouldn't be surprised if they end that with the announcement that the V2 controller is available, or maybe it's just in a press release afterwards if they don't feel it's worthy of a headline in their state of play. But yeah, like I said, I'll probably be picking it up.
How would you feel, Grubb, if they added buttons to the bottom of the controller, like a couple paddles? Yeah,
a couple back paddles, back buttons. I'm all in favor of having those as long as they don't ever get in the way. The right way to do it is make them design them so that you can be touching them without engaging them, and then engaging them is very easy at the same time. That's a tough line to walk. But the other option is to do what the Xbox Series X Pro controller, that can't remember the name, the Elite. You could triple touch one of the buttons on the top there, like the connection button. If you hit that 3 times, it just deactivates those buttons, and no matter what you do, you can't hit them. And then you hit the button 3 times again, and then they work again. So if there's a quick way to turn them off and on, if they are easy to to do a false positive, that would be totally fine with me. I like having that as an option, though. Most of the time I'm not using them. Occasionally I'll get so into a first person shooter that I'm like, I want to do bumper jumper, but I also don't want jump on the bumper. So I'll do this other version where I actually map the jump to the back button, so I never have to take my thumb off the stick. I like having that as an option. Are you a back button user at all?
I'm trying to think of when I would use the back button. Or you mean like the bottom back buttons? Yeah.
Back paddles, any sort of like extra button on the back. Yeah.
I think it's dependent on the game, right? Yeah. And I do like the ability to disable it. Sometimes I'll have to go into like a game specifically to fudge with the config. Primarily, the only use case for me is during a first-person shooter. Because I remember I tried booting up the finals and using a controller, and I just couldn't get it to feel well. So I switched back to mouse and keyboard. But had I had back paddles on my controller where I could map maybe the crouch slide thing, and like the alt ability, I feel like that'd be better suited there. I know all my COD friends, they all have third-party controllers with back paddles because they're freaks.
Right. Yes. People who have like one game like that eventually are all going to end up there eventually. Yeah. That was like a Scuff Gaming was like owning that space for a really long time. They have the Scuffs.
Yep. The bunch of Scuff freaks over there.
I've not seen the new Scuff controller, Dougman. It's a PC only, but has 4 function buttons that can map every button to anything, including keyboard shortcuts. That's interesting. Those macro buttons on controllers, you could do that with the 8-bit Do and stuff like that. But setting that up is such a pain for me, and I'm lazy. It is the real answer. So
I don't know why I've never thought about this, but in a Elgato Stream Deck and X keys, which are just stuff that we use occasionally to help out with a live stream, it's just button mapped to shortcuts.
Hang on, I'm sorry, I'm trying to reach the weird thing that I've never actually set up.
Your pedals?
My foot pedals, yes. I got them down here. I need to map them to something. I am now taking recommendations for what I should have mapped to these 3 buttons.
Screenshot,
of course.
Fart noises is what people are saying.
Not even plugged in. I got this after I used to transcribe interviews. I could have done rewind and pause and stuff on here for interviews and stuff. That would have been useful, but never actually used that for any of that.
But maybe we'll get a little freaky and start using a controller for OBS shortcuts or something.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I like that. All right. Yeah, this was a cheap pedal set. I know Elgato sells foot pedals. This is just an Amazon one for $20 because it's the same thing. Totally. All right. Let's see here. Next story. The title of Bethesda's Indiana Jones game may have leaked. This is from Tom Iben at VGC. The title of Bethesda's upcoming Indiana Jones game may have leaked ahead of a planned reveal this month, as spotted by ex-user Kurakasis Earlier this week, Lucasfilm registered several domains for Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, including one that specifically refers to it as a game. They also note that Lucasfilm filed a trademark in Europe 2 years ago for The Great Circle, which lists video games as one of the goods and services it's intended to be used on. Announced in January 2021, Indiana Jones is in development at Machine Games, the Swedish studio behind the modern Wolfenstein games. There's a developer direct next week, the 18th, where this game has already been confirmed to show up. They'll probably announce the name for certain there, and maybe even give a release date. How do you feel about an Indiana Jones adventure called The Great Circle? A little weird to me.
Grubb, I can tell you that I don't have a lot of interest in any Indiana Jones adventure.
That was going to be my next question. If you were like, I don't care, like, because this is going to be like a stand-in question for Indiana Jones until this game comes out. Me, Mike Minotti talked about this yesterday. We're both Indiana Jones fans. They just kind of hit us at the right time where there's not a lot of other stuff, and it's like Indiana Jones. This is great. It's like James Bond, but better in a lot of ways. I found that most people I meet who are younger than me, to any certain degree, don't really care about Indiana Jones. I'm like, oh yeah, of course not. Why would they care? So is it just like you missed it as a kid and now it's like, whatever?
I distinctly remember watching the movies as a youth, but I don't know what it is where the character just hasn't really stuck with me. Maybe by the time that I was of age to watch the movies and kind of remember them, some character like Lara Croft was already in my periphery.
Right.
And then I was like, well, why would I go with the old dude with the whip when I can go with the pretty lady?
Sure. Crusty old fucking Harrison Ford.
But it's weird though, 'cause chin scars. My partner, big fan of Indiana Jones, and I just can't get into it. Another Indiana Jones like property or character that I think I may have latched onto rather than Indy himself is Brandon Fraser's character from The Mummy.
I was like bracing myself. What's he gonna? I'm like, oh yeah, okay. Brandon Fraser, definitely. No, that was like he definitely like occupied that space in that time. And The Mummy's great. The Mummy is a really fun movie.
Yeah. Indiana Jones, I completely understand. It's a fun ride, and I get the appeal. Cool. But I just can't get into it. Hey, it's completely possible that they'll make a game that will interest me.
Right.
I just can't imagine it because I start thinking of either Uncharted, Lara Croft, or Temple Run.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think there's a little bit of an uphill battle for this game. I'm not sure how much the name The Great Circle is going to help or hurt that. Someone in chat, who said that, said, oh yeah, it was Jamie H. Christmas Eve said, in the trailer, there's a bunch of books on the table about weird circles. They should have called it Indiana Jones and the Weird Circles. That's a much better name. Hey, fair enough. I know there's one of those, what's his name that wrote the book about the Da Vinci Code, the Da Vinci Code author. He wrote one of his follow-up books that has the Langdon character is about magical circles or whatever. So maybe they're going to go that route. I don't know. I hope the MacGuffin is more interesting than just like a cool circle, though. I'm not sure how much that's going to move me. We'll see. Indiana Jones, the rumor right now is this game is coming out this year. That would be pretty big for a game that I think I was assuming, it seems like a lot of other people were assuming would not make it out for quite some time still. That looks like that's going to change. We could get a release date as early as next week, and I hope that's the case. If this game comes out like in the summer, that would be amazing. Yeah.
Do you think this could possibly? Well, I mean, if we're projecting summer, then it's probably not going to be a stealth drop game like Hi-Fi Rush last year.
No. No way.
I know you and Mike talked about what you thought the game would be yesterday on Game Mess, but do you have any updated thoughts, Grubb, as to like what you expect?
Like the money, if I'm betting it, goes on the square that says this is a third-person action-adventure game that is basically, Uncharted plus. Uncharted maybe with a little bit more Machine Games flair in it, which I suppose means I don't know, some good shooting and stuff like that here and there. I think at the end of the day, though, they're gonna like, hey, you have that whip, you got to get around these tombs and these temples, and we're gonna make that feel cool. And then there's gonna be a lot of excellent storytelling sequences, and then these big set pieces because Indiana Jones is known for set pieces. And if you're gonna like start thinking along those lines, you're like, let's just do it like Uncharted. Let's just do it like Uncharted. Why wouldn't we? Uncharted was doing it like Indiana Jones. Let's just, like Mike said, complete the circle. And now here's the name, Great Circle. Yes.
Oh my God, Grubb, you just Robert Langdon the shit.
I could see the code, man. The Da Vinci Code.
You just Fibonacci sequence this.
The Harrison Ford code. We figured it out. We cracked it, everybody. If this game comes out and it's a first-person game similar to Wolfenstein, does that increase, decrease, or do nothing for your interest in it?
I think it increases it, actually. And I know a big appeal of Indiana Jones is Indy the character, so putting it in first person would rob you a lot of those different miscellaneous characteristics. But with machine games specifically, I feel like they get a lot of the character of BJ Blazkowicz and his children, I guess, conveyed very well through being a first person shooter and all of the accompanying cinematics. So I think I might be down with it to be a first person shooter, but I also don't anticipate, or I don't associate Indiana Jones with shooting a bunch of guns.
Not a ton of guns, right? He occasionally picks up a gun and then he drops it before the scene is over.
F. Tongle presents a interesting thing in the chat here. I know that Disney is very, very protective of all of their IP.
Mm-hmm.
But what is a common denominator here with BJ Blazkowicz and Indiana Jones?
Fucking killing Nazis.
What if we find out that Indy is like a relative of Mr. Blazkowicz?
I won't be shocked if he shows up as a subtle Easter egg in the background somewhere. I'll be very shocked, as you mentioned, Disney, very protective. If they make any sort of, lore-changing proclamations about Indiana Jones's relationship to BJ Blazkowicz. I would love it, though. Those characters, at this point in my life, occupy very similar, up on a pedestal positions in the pantheon of characters I care about. So let's make it happen. God, those Wolfenstein games are so good. I want to replay them.
Yeah.
They rule so hard.
Yeah, they do.
Do they pay to get Harrison? Nah, there are some decent sound-alikes out there. Decent because no one really sounds like Harrison Ford, but some people can get the graveliness, and that goes a long way. There are some decent ones that have been doing Harrison Ford's voice in a lot of stuff for a very long time. Mike would probably, I think he mentioned one specifically. Disney's got this crew that they go to for voices. They plan this immediately a lot of times these days.
Mm-hmm.
We're this is going to be the sound-alike we go to forever. I listened to a story somewhere about it. I can't remember. It was a podcast, and they interviewed Joe Hanks or whatever his name is, Terry Hanks.
Tom Hanks's brother, because he fills in as Woody, right?
Yes, Woody, exactly.
Yeah.
He does a lot of Tom Hanks characters, but specifically Woody. And he's he explained how to sound like Tom Hanks. He's like, if I get mad, I sound exactly like Tom. So I basically just pretend I'm mad, and then I'm good. I'm like, cool. You sound a lot like Tom Hanks. Jim Hanks, that's actually what it is. Thank you, Michael O'Leary. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, a lot more news, including some stuff happening with Valve, shutting some stuff down from fans in a way that's unexpected. We'll get to that right after this. Yeah, I think Chet Hanks could play Indiana Jones. What do you think?
Oh, yeah. You know what? I think we're all taking a turn on Chet Hanks. I think we're all enabling Chet Hanks in 2024.
Yeah, you know what happened is I looked into it enough to be like, okay, he's really weirding me out with these Jamaican accents, and then you see him doing around Jamaican people, and they're like, man, you're really good at that. This rules. This is one of the best white people I've ever met. I'm like, okay, all right, well, who am I to stop him at this point? You do you, man.
Let's get Chet Hanks on the dump truck. Wataguan.
All right, so let's see here. Next story. Game developers will need to disclose AI use on Steam. This is from George Yang at GameSpot. Steam has implemented some new guidelines regarding the use of AI in video games being sold on its platforms. Developers will be required to disclose how AI is being used in them. Steam updated its content survey that developers fill out when submitting their games on Steam. In a newly added AI disclosure section, developers are required to describe how AI is being used in both the development and executions of their games. The use is separated into two categories, pre-generated and live-generated. Pre-generated AI use refers to content such as art, code, and sound created with AI tools during development. During Valve's pre-release review, the company will evaluate the output of AI generated content the same as it does with non-AI content. Since all developers are beholden to Steam's distribution agreement, Valve will also check their games for illegal or infringing content and whether they are consistent with marketing materials. For live generated content, it refers to content that uses AI tools while the game is running. The rules for pre-generated AI use also apply to live generated content, but with one more requirement. Developers will need to describe the but with one more requirement, developers will need to describe in the content survey what kind of measures they will take to make sure that AI isn't generating any illegal content while the game is running. The underlying thing here, Jan, is that while doing this, Steam is also sort of opening up the door wider to say, okay, you can release your AI generated games for the most part, for lack of a better term, AI generated games on Steam. You got to fill out the survey to tell us what's what, but you could sell it on Steam now. So people are concerned this is going to mean even more shovelware on Steam. And I think they're concerned because that's exactly what's going to happen. Now, there's a couple of ideas about how to handle this stuff. One is let's just stand in the way and block it. And I think a lot of people would be happy to do that. And I think at the end of the day, I would be pretty happy for that. And then at the same time, that doesn't usually work. That these things find their way, and eventually, if they are these tools that are actually going to be useful to people to make stuff, and then maybe someone makes something good, and it's we should let them in. It's well, now we have these rules. You can't let any AI stuff in. Now, I think people would argue against that and say, well, just pick and choose, be very selective. Curate your store. Valve has stepped away from that. They don't do that. That's not going to be an option. So no. Yeah, I think it's going to get real messy. Jan, how do you feel about this?
Oh yeah, I mean, we're already trudging through the sludge right now of even figuring out how AI is being implemented in games and just in general work practices already. Now thinking about how it's going to be used in game development, and then how it is going to be used to fast track a bunch of garbo. Someone said this earlier, but think about how someone will make a hentai game narrated by Drake. And then, my first instinct was John Drake. And I'm just thinking about him yelling at me and talking about a bunch of Diet Cokes.
I'm John Drake. I'm drinking Diet Coke, and I'm the fun czar from Harvard. Here's a butthole. All right, John
Mike
Drake.
Minotti, you're not gonna get quack shot. But and that part does sound fun. But then I think about the very, very ugly aspects that can quickly spin out of that, where there are going to be, and there are, tons and tons of people out there that are using AI in very exploitative ways.
Yeah.
And the thing is, a lot of those people also don't see the problem with using AI in exploitative methods. They just think it's funny. They think they're doing it for a goof, or now they're going to be doing it to turn a quick dollar around. And I 100% am with you with the method of let's just stand in the way and block it. But I guess at least Valve, if they're not going to stand in the way and block it, because they haven't done that with any of their garbageware, the least they can do is make developers disclose if there's AI aspects in the development of a game. Do you know if they're going to disclose as to what extent, if it's just going to be a little bit of the stuff that we're saying of procedural stuff, or in the moment type of things, or I don't know, I just needed to type up a little bit of dialogue.
Yeah, I think that they're going to have to kind of disclose how AI works across the board. And I think they will likely have to say in it, what model did you use to train your AI? And if someone says, well, we just use these publicly available tools that are trained on undetermined sets of other people's artwork, that could quickly be a situation where it's Valve will be well, no, we're not going to let you through. We need to know where this is coming from, or you need to promise us that it isn't using people's artwork to who you don't have credit toward. And if you lie about that, well, now we've covered our ass as Steam as Valve. Yeah. And when you get sued by someone else and they sued us, well, we'll countersue you because you are the reason that we are liable because you lied to us, and we'll have the paperwork and we're covered there. It's going to be messy because the tools that people are using now are 100% exploiting the artwork of other people who have not given permission for their work to be used. And even like in the voice acting space, like we got a story about that here in a little bit. About SAG-AFTRA has a deal, and like, well, the members didn't vote on this, so is that actually going to be a real deal? Is this actually good for voice actors? And people are going to. I think the good thing here is people are so tapped into this, so savvy about it, that it is going to be a red mark on your game if you are using AI in an obvious way. If you aren't using it as a creative tool to unlock more creativeness in yourself, people are going to be able to spot that immediately, and you will get a reputation, and your game will have a reputation, and it will hurt it in the end. And I think we do get to a point eventually, because I mean, we think of all the software tools that we have that kind of do a lot of stuff for us. Like, there's so many things that we've gotten to, and like, people follow YouTube tutorials of just like, here, just do this, go to Google and Google all this code base and basically just copy it. You're not supposed to, but just basically just copy it. And people do that to make stuff all the time. This is in line with that to a certain extent, other than it is using other people's work. But we probably get to a point where people find a way to have the benefits of AI technology without the exploitation that requires paying people to create original art to train models, though. So it's like we're kind of back at square one in a lot of ways. It's going to be messy for quite some time, and I think we kind of do have to just take it head on, which is why I'm mostly okay with what Valve is doing here. That doesn't mean there's not going to be pain, though. There's going to be pain along the way for sure, and hopefully we do get to the other side and don't just settle in the pain of like, well, this is hurting a bunch of people, and that could very well happen. So we'll see.
The uglier part that I'm thinking about now, Grubb, is we're giving people too much credit, and that they're using AI to rip off art styles and dialogue and code. I just think of now the AAA people, and not necessarily the actual devs, but the people above the AAA people that are now going to be like, well, Valve is letting us use AI. We're going to use AI. You people especially don't matter anymore. And I'm just thinking of like, okay, they're definitely not going to have an AI tag on Steam of like, yeah, we fired in X amount of people because we found a way to implement AI here. Just because there's a lot of just general misunderstanding with it. I can't wait for the headline a year and a half from now saying that Square Enix is implementing AI in a completely dumbass way because, we're very late to the NFT train. So we're going to see them in a couple of years with AI. I'm calling it now. Yeah,
they had a letter earlier this year. Kind of the new CEO said something like, "We're looking at AI. The letter next year will be even dumber, 100%."
Yeah.
All right. More from Valve. Portal 64 and Team Fortress Source 2 fan projects shut down after Valve DMCA. This is from Zoe Hanley at Destructoid. Amper Software, the team behind Team Fortress Source 2, and James Lambert, the dev working on Portal 64, have stated that they're ending development of their fan projects following cease and desist demands from Valve. Team Fortress Source 2 was a fan project aiming to port Valve's 2007 multiplayer shooter, Team Fortress 2, over to the newer Source 2 engine. While the team had paused development in September, they were hoping to resume at some point, but the DMCA has made that pause permanent. Meanwhile, Portal 64 is a project intended to demake 2007's Portal to run on Nintendo 64 hardware. Just a few days ago, the developer was celebrating the release of the game's first slice, which demonstrated the game's progress. The Team Fortress Source 2 takedown seems rather understandable since Valve still supports Team Fortress 2 and may one day want to port it or create its sequel themselves. I'll stop. I don't know if that one actually makes a ton of sense because fans can do that. And Valve could still do that, and Valve would still make a ton of money, and it would not even, I don't think it would cause any damages. Now, Valve could always argue that, and they're within their right. Valve, the people at Valve that are doing this are within their legal right. It definitely says in the user agreement of all this stuff that you can't do exactly what they're doing here. I just think Valve is in a better place usually when they stand back and let the modding scene do what it does, and not just don't get in the way, but encourage it. These are people that could one day end up making games that make a ton of money on Steam. You want to be encouraging them and not standing in their way. The Portal 64 one, that one does make sense because that game uses Nintendo libraries that are copyrighted, and Valve is like, listen, you're doing something with our IP that involves Nintendo, and we just don't want to make Nintendo mad because they have really good lawyers, and we just don't want to be brought into that. So please just stop that. Cease and desist. That one I get. The one with Team Fortress Source 2, I think is in that zone where it's like, there was that period where fan films were a really big thing in the early internet, and Star Wars was like, we are shutting all of these down, and we don't want any of this. And Star Trek was like, go to fucking town, do all you want. And it's like it didn't help nor hurt either IP in any real way. It was like these brands, these companies overthinking things, and in the case of Star Wars, and it seemed like in the end the right position is let's create a space for fans to do this work. I think that has been Valve's position in the past. So the fact that they're suddenly changing here is weird when it comes to Team Fortress Source 2. How do you feel about it, Jan?
The Portal 64 stuff, like after hearing that they're flipping assets that are straight up Nintendo, I completely understand. Because do you remember, Grubb, that Valve had put out a screenshot promoting the Steam Deck, I think, and then one of the apps was like Citra.
It was Yuzu. It was the
Yuzu.
Switch emulator. Yeah.
So especially like spicy.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, this is a weird, fairly conservative stance from Valve that I'm continually surprised by them tightening the belt, because it used to feel like they were really encouraging people to futz around with the specific Valve properties. I don't know. I don't see this as them switching it up and like that they themselves are going to be doing anything with Portal or Team Fortress anytime soon. It stinks. But ultimately, I guess I understand why they have to tighten the belt.
Yeah. Like the Team Fortress Source 2 GitHub page says that apparently Valve assets were being used, and that's why they're being shut down. But like this also points out that many other fan projects have done the same thing, and they're out there and not getting harassed like this. And then again, Portal 64, the Nintendo of America is just a law firm. You'll get sued. You want to avoid that if possible. I mean, listen, ideally, this Portal 64 thing, it's awesome. I would love it. Keep making it. But I understand why Valve ends up there. But hey, these things also seem to like come and go, right? They oscillate back and forth.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, we'll probably in a couple months, maybe a year, it'll be back in this position where Valve's like, oh, sorry about all that. We were just kind of, someone new. They weren't really thinking. We're back to the old position. Sorry about all that, and just move on from there. So we'll see. Hopefully we get back to a situation where fan projects have a safe haven under Valve.
Yeah, for a while it felt like that was kind of the pipeline, right? You make a game you inspired by or using a lot of Valve's stuff, and that kind of acts as like a rehearsal or an audition to eventually get acquired by Valve down the line.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, Black Mesa was a mod that the Half-Life 1 remake, and it's like eventually, like Valve just brought them into the fold. I don't think they acquired them, but they're like, we'll distribute your game and give you full license. A lot of times that stuff is still very challenging. Like John Drake talked about that, right? Like when we were on the couch a little bit, where he's like, yeah, I feel like fan projects are working on something, and I'm like, well, let's just go out and work with them. And then he's like, the lawyers start talking, and they just go a million miles per second about why that could never happen. And it's like not stuff that's like easy to wrap your mind around. It mostly seems like it would be a headache for a bunch of lawyers, and they don't want to deal with it. So that's why we don't usually get these things.
Yeah. Yeah, and we don't want to give the lawyers a headache.
All right, that's the most important concern that we have, absolutely. Sony CEO says Zelda live action will be an epic story of adventure and discovery. That's the 99% of the reason I included this story, Jan. I'm not going to get over. Sony CEO says Zelda live action movie that he is making will be an epic story of adventure and discovery. This is from Alberto Garrido at Game Reactor. Although most of the attention at CES 2024 in Las Vegas is focused on presenting us with the latest technological innovations, Companies have also taken the opportunity to give us advanced information about some of the projects in their entertainment divisions, as is the case with Sony. We've already talked these days about the small preview of the Gravity Rush movie and the status of the God of War and Horizon series projects. We've talked about that on the show earlier this week. But we didn't want to overlook Sony CEO Kenichiro, there we go, Yoshida's mention of the upcoming live-action The Legend of Zelda movie produced in conjunction with Sony Pictures. We are also excited about another IP expansion, the adaptation of Nintendo's The Legend of Zelda game franchise. This live-action film will deliver an incredible story of adventure and discovery. Listen, we knew this was happening. This is just marketing fluff that doesn't really mean anything. But it's wild to live in a world where at Sony's CES press conference, they're talking about Zelda. It's wild.
Yeah.
I don't know.
How do you feel, Grubb, about it being in Sony Pictures' hands?
I would feel way better if it was animated. Because Sony Pictures has got a great animation team. They do some really fantastic work over there. And that's CGI stuff, but man, you put a couple of filters over CGI, trying to make it look a little bit more anime, a little bit more Miyazaki, and you are 90% of the way to giving me the Zelda movie of my dreams. Sony Pictures produces a lot of good live action movies as well. And, that doesn't, past isn't always pretense. It isn't always like going to tell you exactly what's going to happen. A new director coming in, a new creative team could really, to capture this stuff and really make it work.
Yes.
But I'm just mostly like, I don't know. The safe money on like predicting the future of this project is it's probably going to be pretty disappointing, and that's where my expectations are right now. How do you feel?
I'm so on the fence because Sony Pictures is capable of producing fantastic films. The Gran Turismo movie was okay, but then you have like the Into the Spider-Verse series. Hotel Transylvania while we're talking about animation. But then you also have very odd titles like Dampire, Venus, and Mark Wahlberg's Father Stu Reborn.
What? Are you making this shit up?
Nope. I pulled up Sony Pictures' movies titles and I just started looking at a bunch of things that I've never heard before.
Reborn. Oh my God, that's Mark Wahlberg.
Yep. They also are responsible this year, Grubb, for Kraven the Hunter and Madam Web.
Madam Web, but we're all mad for Madam Web. You know me.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Yep.
They made it. Yes, that's Father Stu. This is the sequel, Father Stu Reborn. I'm sorry. He's just.
Wait, there's a sequel? This is a sequel?
This is a sequel, yes.
I didn't know they made a sequel. I thought that was the first movie.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is the second one. Yeah. Because there's a Father Stewart and then the Father Stu : Reborn.
Oh, great. There's also a movie called Sniper Grit. I guess they made more Swan Princess movies, but see, at the same time, Grubb, Sony Pictures is capable of making like a nice small film like Shortcomings.
Yep.
Randall Park's directorial debut.
Oh yeah.
And Insidious: The Red Door. Patrick Wilson directed that joint.
Really? They also did the Da Vinci Code. So there you go.
They also did the Da Vinci Code. We're connecting. We're doing the Fibonacci sequence again, correct?
Yeah. I mean, listen, they worked with like Danny Boyle in the past. They've done some good movies. They did The Social Network and Whiplash. They got some movies I really like. It really seems heavily dependent on the director. And the Zelda movie is being directed by the guy that's doing that new Planet of the Apes movie. He did The Maze Runner. Is that, chat? Please correct me.
Wes Ball.
Yeah, Wes Ball. And I'm like, Wes Ball seems like he has a chance to do something pretty decent here. So
yeah.
I
put Wes Ball in the same stratosphere as Dan Trachtenberg.
Sure, yeah.
Someone that is like a big fan of the IP that they want to work on and are working on. So hopefully they don't get mired by studio execs of trying to ham fist everything that they want into it and let Wes Ball cook.
And that's Avi Arad would be one of the main culprits there, who has definitely had some hits, made some good movies, has had, and of course there I'm talking about Morbius, of course. So,
well, I mean,
the most successful movie of all time.
Lest me not forget, it's always Morbin time.
It's always Morbin time. Sony also did Bullet Train. Once upon a time.
Bullet Train was a decent film.
It was okay.
Yeah.
I saw a tweet the other day where it's like, what is this genre of film? And it's like all those like slick movies from Netflix, like Bullet Train and Argyle, that new one from
the Kingsman guy.
One? Yeah. The Kingsman guy. Yes. And it's like movies that your parents watch 3 months after it comes out just because they were on Netflix one night. It's like, that's what that genre is.
Also, the Equalizer series.
They did Equalizer. All right. I've never seen those movies. I'm always like, I'm gonna watch the Equalizer one day. That's Denzel Washington, right? That's Denzel.
Yep. That's Denzel's Denzel. Property. And hey, not to be too Sucio here, I know it's a morning show, but Sony Pictures also gave us no hard feelings with Jennifer Lawrence. And if you grew up a fan of Hunger Games like I did, there were very surprising scenes in that.
Yeah. I haven't watched that yet, but those are good trailers for that reason. Hey, John David Washington, he's actually a really good actor, right? Denzel's son. He's not just it's not just charisma, right? Which obviously that's part of acting, but I love everything. Every time I see John David Washington, I'm like, fuck yeah, man, get it.
Yeah,
my number one Nepo baby.
Yeah, if we're going Nepo babies, like he's cooking. Yeah, I like him.
Have you ever seen Black Klansman?
He was great in that.
That movie's so goddamn good, and he's so great in it.
Him and Adam Driver had really good chemistry in that. God, what else? I liked him in that short film he did with Zendaya, Malcolm and Marie. He seemed like a real prime asshole in that one.
Is that the one where Zendaya is Michi?
Yes, Zendaya is always Michi. Let's be real. But what else? He was good in The Creator also.
Yeah,
that sci-fi flick from last year.
Yeah, he like carries a lot of movies like that one on his back in terms of like, there's not a lot to hold on to in terms of like the plot, or there's too much plot. And I'm like, well, no, John David Washington's trying to do shit, so I'm invested.
He's going to be one of Christopher Nolan's new toys moving forward.
I think, yes, absolutely. And I'm completely fine with that. He is like, when Christopher Nolan's like, oops, too many movies with white guys in a row, go do a John David Washington one. I think that's a great plan.
That being said, Christopher Nolan, I know you watch a bunch of weird shit because you virtually watch everything. Put Grubb and Jan in one of your movies.
Let's go. I will 100%.
We'll press the...
I will get just send me to your suit guy, your sartorial guy. I want to have you dress me up and put me on film, please.
We will press the button panically instead of Josh Peck.
Yeah, let's go. All right. Next story here. Sony. Nope, I got that one. Why video game voice actors don't love the new SAG-AFTRA deal. This is from Alyssa Mercante at Kotaku. Shout out to Alyssa. After months of speculation from voice actors concerned with how their voices could be co-opted by AI, and recent announcements from companies like Ubisoft and Tencent that they'll use NVIDIA's new AI tools to provide voices for NPCs, the Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, which is SAG-AFTRA, announced what it calls a groundbreaking new deal with an AI tech company. And that's groundbreaking in quotes. Unsurprisingly, the deal is far more complicated than SAG-AFTRA makes it seem, and it also appears to have been made without consulting voice actors themselves, which is weird. The deal with tech company Replica Studios pertains to the licensing and use of AI replicas of voices in video games and will enable Replica to engage SAG-AFTRA members under a fair, ethical agreement to safely create and license a digital replica of their voice. Licensed voices can be used in video game development and other interactive media projects from pre-production to the final release. The deal reportedly has been built in pre-production, or has reportedly been built in has built-in safety nets, for actors, like consent requirements, negotiation options, and the ability to opt out of future use of the digitized versions of their voices. Let's see here. I'm going to try to jump to where like the problem is, because a lot of that sounds like, okay, maybe. To be clear, SAG-AFTRA members can choose whether they want to sign this deal or not, and it's only specific to that one AI voice generation company. But based on the reaction from social media, it's a fairly unpopular deal, and it's currently unclear just how many of the affected members SAG-AFTRA contacted, as many prolific people in the community are claiming this is the first time they've ever heard of it. Excuse me, with all due respect, you state in the article, approved by affected members of the union's voiceover performer community. Nobody in our community approved this that I know of. Games are the bulk of my livelihood and have been for years. Who are you referring to? And that's iconic voice actor Steve Bloom.
Oh, shit.
Who's coming? If Steve Bloom's coming after you, watch out. I would humbly consider myself one of the top voice actors in games. No one asked me about this. No one reached out for my opinion. From what I'm seeing, no one asked any of my peers either. And that's Starfield actor Elias Tufeish. Approved by affected members of the union's voiceover performer community. Where and when SAG-AFTRA wasn't aware of this until just now, and I'm the exact type of member you're talking about, and that's God of War Ragnarok actor Shelby Young. So yeah, I think mostly people are like, I'm blindsided by this. Why didn't I see the details of this deal? These things have so many caveats, so many like interlocking parts, that just saying the good words of, consent and safety mechanisms, that's one thing. But these are all people who fully understand the business, fully understand how they have been exploited in the past and how they could be exploited again. And of course, they're going to want to have their input heard. So I get why most people are like very weirded out, especially with SAG-AFTRA positioning it as this is voice actor approved, when it does not seem like that's the case. What do you think's happening here?
It seems too big to be oversight, Grubb.
Yeah.
And I know, unfortunately, a lot of the voice acting community occasionally will not get taken seriously as like a live action actor. Like I know Pro ZD Sun Wong gets a lot of flack from people approaching him of like, well, how do you feel about being in this movie for the first time, like for the Blackberry film? And then he's sitting there like, what do you mean? I've been in movies. Like I've done voice work for movies before. This isn't my first rodeo here. So I don't know if it's a case of that. It may be a case of very poor leadership, because if you're not consulting the top names in voice acting, then what are you doing? Right? Like,
especially if you're saying that it's like, this is for those affected members and this is the first they're hearing about it.
Yeah, and I can't fathom any realm where a voice actor would sign away rights to use their voice to be generated. Unless, I don't know. Yeah, I can't think of one unless they're on their deathbed and want to continue collecting royalties.
That is the example, right? It is James Earl Jones, who has his estate. He signed away the use of his voice to Lucasfilm going forward for the role of Darth Vader. And he's approved it. The estate has approved it. And that means they're going to keep getting paid after he's gone. And you could see why he does that. And you can kind of see why a lot of people want that. Hey, my opinion is maybe it's time to be done with Darth Vader then. Let's just be done with Darth Vader. No more Darth Vader stuff for a while. That'd be great. And when we come back, maybe he is played by someone else. But whatever. Just no more Darth Vader. That wouldn't be the end of the world. But he wants to keep getting paid. Lucasfilm keeps wanting to make Darth Vader stuff because that means they keep making money. So the incentives are there. I see it, but you're right. Sort of outside of that circumstance, and maybe we're just not thinking creatively enough where other people might approve this. Hey, if you keep getting paid every time someone uses your voice and you don't have to do any extra work, I could see some people being like, yeah, okay, sure. But, it works that way already with residuals. They just have to keep using those lines. And when they want new lines, they have to come back to you, kind of creating a necessity for you, putting yourself in a situation where if, those checks stop coming, but they could still keep using your voice because they have everything they need, it seems like a precarious position to be in. Yeah. I bet most voice actors fully understand that. And that's why this coming out of nowhere, surprising them and feeling like, wait, I'm supposed to just be okay with this? You tell me this is good. I need to know that this is good before I'm like going to approve it or whatever. So
yeah,
yes, we'll this again, it's going to be messy. It's going to be a lot of this year is going to be figuring this stuff out. But at a certain point, it is about like damming the river, right? It's about the water is flowing in this direction. This stuff is going to be used. If it's cheaper and it can get some stuff done, someone out there is going to want to use it. And at a certain point, especially if it's cheaper, if the competitors are using it, and we lost Jan Ochoa there for a second. If the competitor,
my camera's dead.
Okay, no,
I'm still here.
No worries, we still got Jan. Never mind. If the competitors are using it and you're not, well, then you're at a competitive disadvantage. So the union's trying to get on board early and establishing the rules and affecting the flow of that river is maybe the best they can hope for, or maybe I'm. I could just be cynical. That could just be a cynical take, and people who are actually fighting this fight can get more out of it than what I imagine. And I hope that's the case. That would be the best case scenario.
The dark future I see for this is I don't know. With every AI thing is just exploiting the existing talent,
Mhm.
where I can see a world where maybe there's a very popular anime that needs to be dubbed over in multiple languages. Say, like, a show like Attack on Titan is very big, or was very big, and that still hasn't been translated or dubbed into other languages. I could see perhaps if there were some voice actors that signed on for something like that to have their voice generated in a repository of sorts, then like, hey, we actually don't need you for this dub. We're just gonna type in the script, and we have enough of your voice to make it anyway. So we'll just toss you a little check.
Yep, exactly. Right. Where if you are not necessary, your bargaining power goes down very fast, and that's just, no one wants to be in that situation. At a certain point, though, it's like it can feel inevitable. Not if you could put rules in place early on, and that's what these are trying to do. It's like, but when you don't feel like you're part of that process, then you're right back at square one, and you're right back of like, oh, I feel like I'm going to get left out because I'm left out of these negotiations. I'm left out of the understanding of how all this works. That's the biggest concern here, is me getting left out, and that's what this process is making me feel. And you're supposed to be representing me. I could see why people have a problem with it. All right, last couple of headlines here. Spider-Man 2 leads the DICE Awards nominations. This is from Tom Ivan at VGC. The game I think it got 7 nominations in that range. Yeah, the total of 56 games were released last year that have been nominated across 23 awards categories. With the full list published publicly today, Spider-Man 2 is in the running for 9 awards. There we go, ahead of Alan Wake 2 with 8, and Baldur's Gate 3 with 7, and Cocoon with 6. All 4 titles are also up for the coveted Game of the Year prize, alongside The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, which received 5 nominations. The peer juried awards, this is like the equivalent of the Oscars, where it's like actually by other people in the industry voting for these awards. It'll take place on February 15th, the actual award show. Greg Miller will be hosting. He'll be one of the co-hosts for that. He has been for the last couple of years. He does a good job at that show. I have like, just to reiterate, the Game of the Year is Alan Wake 2, Baldur's Gate 3, Cocoon, Marvel Spider-Man 2, and The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. And I like the DICE Awards a lot, because it's like, you could tell, like, these are people that make games, and they're just like, when they play a game that's like, how the fuck did you do this? Or how is there so much of this? They're like, yeah, we're absolutely going to call that out. So I like it that like Spider-Man 2 is the one getting the most nominations, because you know that developers play that game and they're like, holy shit, how did you guys do this?
That aspect is very fun of the DICE Awards. And yeah, there's still aspects of Spider-Man 2 where I'm like, how are they doing this? How'd they do that?
Yep, absolutely. And, a lot of these games on there, Cocoon is still going to have that same thing. I think the DICE Awards was the one where Goose Game, Untitled Goose Game won. I think that's what it was. It's like, yeah, developers just sometimes are just like, we really like this, or this tickled us, or we wish we would have made this. I think that's a lot of times what wins at these sort of things. So at least this sort of thing. So that's very cool. I had a couple other categories here. The only other one I actually included is Outstanding Achievement in Art Direction: Alan Wake 2, Hogwarts Legacy, Marvel Spider-Man 2, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, and Starfield. What do you think is the best looking game out of all those?
Alan Wake 2,
yeah, I think
just because
Alan Wake 2, yeah.
Ilka is very handsome.
Yeah, and it uses art direction, and it implies like everything about like the way the game looks. And I think Alan Wake 2 is using every tool in the box to make a game that is very memorable to look at. I
don't know if I would put Star Wars Jedi Survivor there. I think I'd rather put Tears of the Kingdom, but that is my personal preference.
It's noon. Let me double check real quick. I thought I could say this. Sorry. Let me see here. I'm going to check my email. Prince of Persia embargo. Hey, that game fucking rules. Holy shit, is that game awesome. Holy goddamn, is that one of the best games I've ever played. It's so good. Jen, how far are you into it? You got the code late. You were sick and you came back. Where's my code? And we were all like, oh, sorry, bud, we forgot.
Maybe like an hour and a half in. Wasn't really into the first half hour, but then after shit hits the fan, oh, okay, Ubisoft, okay,
it just keeps getting better. It's one of the best Metroidvanias ever made. I teared up a little bit when I got the double jump. Like, that's where I'm at with this game. I got the double jump and I teared up because it just was like, oh my God, there's so many places I can use this. Oh, think about all those spots where I can use this. What a goddamn good game.
There's also a lot of smart iterating on the Metroidvania format. And folks listening at home. Yeah, the screenshots. What the fuck?
That you pin to your map. So then you're like, okay, like, where can I use this? Like, I don't remember. I've got shit memory. Oh, I took a screenshot and it's a pin to my map and it's Ubisoft Connect. So it goes over the cloud. If I were to go from my Roger Ally to my Switch, those screenshots come along and now I can look on my little map on here and make that picture bigger and see, oh, it's one of those doors over there. And I do have the power to deal with that now. It's like, I guess it's what I've been asking for forever. One of these big publishers that has all these resources and all of this built up skill of how to make a good game and just do it in a genre that is cheating. Like Metroidvania is a cheat code to making a good game because it's like, it makes everything matter. Everything has a payoff. Everything you do is going to pay off later. And that is such a good feeling. And everything pays off. And then every moment to moment gameplay, the movement is great. The puzzle solving is great. The combat is great. It is just a great game. I am blown away by it. I'm like, I don't even think I'm overselling it. I think if you're not into Metroidvanias, I don't necessarily think this one's going to win you over. I bet you'll still get a good time out of it, though. Even if you've been like, other Metroidvanias don't work for me. I don't like backtracking. This one, and you could turn on the guided feature. I think Bacalar's been playing with it guided. I've been just kind of like wandering around and loving it, but it's got the guided thing. So just play that instead, and then that'll minimize the backtracking. I don't know. It's just really good.
Look forward to when we, as a group, review it tomorrow on Bombcast Revengeance. That'll be the first half of tomorrow's episode. And later today, Grubb, we're gonna just jump into it, right?
That's right. Yeah. Everyone, let me. Like, I'm like 3/4 of the way through it. I don't think I could go back to an earlier save. Let me know if you guys would be okay with seeing most of the abilities, or if you want me to start fresh. And I'll kind of like just weigh what people are saying. Just feel free to come and chat before we're about to start. I'll make the decision then. But yeah, because probably seeing most of the abilities probably is the right call here, everybody. So you want to see like what you're capable of. But I get if you don't want gameplay spoilers, that could be a problem too. So we'll see. Like I said, I got very moved. I knew the double jump was coming, but they kind of just put it late in the game. Yeah. And I'm like, God, it's like just all this buildup of like, I'm like almost 10 hours into the game and I finally got the double jump and there's like maybe another third left around there. And it's like, okay, now the whole world is my oyster. So just a powerful game.
Grubb, what if we start fresh for the first, maybe if we're going for an hour, we'll start fresh for like 40 minutes. And then the last 20 minutes, people can tune out where we'll show off some of the later game abilities.
That sounds like a very good plan. Let's do that.
Boom, boom, boom.
Okay, let's wrap this show up. Hitman Blood Money Reprisal is out on the Switch this month. I forgot that was happening. I love this. More publishers and developers should just be putting out shit old games on Switch. Like, I keep thinking about Square not putting Einhander out on the Switch, a PlayStation 1 game. Just do that. We should get more of that. This is a really good idea. I hope more developers actually use this. Even going forward to the Switch 2, it would be a great place to house some of these older games. Okay, I have a poll question. We'll get to that here in a second. But Jan, while I'm getting that set up, why don't you tell people what we have going on Giant Bomb for the rest of this week?
If you're listening and watching live an hour from now, Jeff Grubb and I, and maybe some other folks, will be dipping into Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown. After that, later in the afternoon, an episode of Voicemail Dump Truck. Tune in tomorrow for another episode of Game Mess Mornings, as well as a VR grab bag of shit and fun of for UPF, as well as tomorrow for Bombcast Revengeance, the first half we will be reviewing Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, and then the second half we will be doing the Game Critic Fantasy League.
Yep, for Giant Bomb.
Great.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm like looking forward to all this stuff. All right, poll question: does Indiana Jones matter to you? 42% said yes, 58% say no. I bet as you get out to a wider audience outside of the 3,700 people that responded to this poll on the Giant Bomb YouTube channel, I bet that number goes down, not like precipitously, probably doesn't like fall off a cliff, but I bet you lose about 5 to 10% points as you get to a broader and broader audience. I don't think that pretends anything negative for the game, though. A game can turn things around on its own and make something like Indiana Jones matter to people who it never mattered to before, right?
I mean, look at Spider-Man, and like someone like Dan isn't necessarily a big Marvel comic book person at all,
right?
But Dan really enjoyed Spider-Man, so I'm of that same argument where this poll is not representative of people's interest or future interest in Indiana Jones.
Yeah, just means a little bit more work. Now, Spider-Man, one of the most popular characters ever, but you're right. Like, there are examples of people being like, well, I don't care about the comics. And then, Dan thinks he's a nerdy character. Like, in the movies, he doesn't like him. So showing up like, nope, the game is too much fun to ignore. And I think that's possible here as well, especially for machine games. All right, and then we have a new poll question. Are you happy with the battery life of your DualSense? Yes or no? We'll talk about that on Game Mess Warnings on Giant Bomb tomorrow. Speaking of Giant Bomb, if you are watching live, like we said, about an hour. Is that right, Jan? Is that what you said?
An hour or so, yeah.
An hour
That's
or
what the calendar says.
An hour or so, Prince of Persia. We'll see you then. If you're watching later, all that stuff will be up on giantbomb.com, here on the YouTube channel, and we're always live during the weekdays on Twitch. So check us out. All right, Jan, thank you so much for spending today talking with me about video games, man. You know I appreciate it.
It's my favorite way to start a Thursday.
And thank you all for watching. You're the best audience in gaming. Until next time, have a good one. Take care of yourself, and goodbye.